Abraham's call and covenant, a journey of faith, a promise eternal, long before the kings of Israel, before Moses parted seas or prophets thundered oracles from mountain tops. There was a man named Abram, a man living in Ur of the Chaldeans, surrounded by idols, comforts, and the stability of family land. He was not yet a father, not yet a patriarch, and yet this ordinary man was about to become the foundation of something extraordinary, a journey that would ripple through the ages. The call of a voice unseen, one day, without warning, God spoke to Abram, "Go from your country, your people, and your father's household to the land I will show you. I will make you into a great nation, and I will bless you. I will make your name great, and you will be a blessing, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Genesis 12 1-3, no roadmap, no details, just a call and a promise. And Abram went. At 75 years old, Abram set out with his wife Sarai, his nephew Lot, and all their possessions. He left behind everything familiar, driven only by faith in a God he had never seen but had clearly heard. This was not just a change of address, it was a declaration of trust and divine destiny. A journey of trust. God led Abram to the land of Canaan, a place rich in promise but occupied by foreign nations. There, God said, "To your offspring I will give this land." Abram built altars and called on the name of the Lord, but as the years passed, the promises seemed to hang in the air, unrealized. He faced famines, conflicts, and above all childlessness. How could he become a great nation if he had no heir? In a moment of weakness, he asked God, "Sovereign Lord, what can you give me since I remain childless?" God responded not with rebuke, but with reassurance. He took Abram outside under the night sky and said, "Look up at the sky and count the stars, if indeed you can count them. So shall your offspring be." And Abram believed. That simple act of faith was recorded not just as hope, but as righteousness. It was the moment that turned belief into covenant. The covenant cut in blood. God's promise was more than words. In a solemn, mysterious ceremony, God instructed Abram to sacrifice animals and arrange their pieces on the ground. As darkness fell, a smoking firepot and a blazing torch, symbols of God's presence, passed between the pieces. This was a covenant sealed in ritual and blood, binding God to his promise that Abram's descendants would one day possess the land. "To your descendants I give this land, from the river of Egypt to the great river, the Euphrates." But there would also be delay. God foretold that Abram's descendants would be enslaved for 400 years. Yet they would return and inherit the land. This covenant was not just about one man or one family. It was the birth of a people, a sacred agreement reaching far into the future. The struggle of human impatience, yet even the most faithful can falter. Years passed. Sarai, still barren, offered her servant Hagar to Abram, hoping to produce a child through her. Hagar bore a son, Ishmael, but this was not the child of promise. Though Ishmael would be blessed, God had something else in mind, a covenant son through Sarai herself. At 99 years old, Abram again encountered God. This time, the promise took new shape. "I am God Almighty. Walk before me faithfully and be blameless. Then I will make my covenant between me and you, and will greatly increase your numbers." God then changed Abram's name to Abraham, meaning father of many, and Sarai's to Sarah, princess. And the long-awaited promise came into focus. Sarah would bear a son, Isaac, through whom the covenant would continue. The sign of the covenant God gave Abraham a sign to mark this everlasting bond: circumcision. Every male in his household and every male descendant would carry this physical reminder of the covenant. At nearly 100 years old, Abraham obeyed immediately. He circumcised himself, his son Ishmael, and all his male servants. It was a bold act of obedience, a declaration that he believed what God had spoken, even if it still seemed impossible. Themes that echo across time. The story of Abraham's call and covenant is more than a tale of ancient wanderings. It is a story of faith. Abraham believed in the face of the impossible. His life is the model of what it means to trust God when nothing makes sense. Covenant. God's promises to Abraham are central to the biblical narrative promises of land, descendants, and blessing that echo through Jewish, Christian, and Islamic traditions. Obedience. Abraham responded not just with belief, but with action. He moved, he sacrificed, he marked his body and household, all in trust. Conclusion. A story still unfolding. The call of Abraham was the beginning of something much larger than himself. Through his descendants would come a people, a nation, and ultimately, according to Christian belief, the Messiah, Jesus Christ, through whom all nations on earth shall be blessed. In Islam, Abraham is honored as a prophet and the builder of the Kaaba in Mecca. In Judaism, he is the father of the covenant. Across traditions, his story invites us to consider, what does it mean to walk by faith? What promises shape our journey? And how do we respond when God says, go? Abraham and Isaac, a mountain of faith. When trust meets the unthinkable, the morning broke quiet and clear. The sun had barely touched the horizon when Abraham rose from his tent, eyes heavy with the weight of what God had said. His son Isaac was still sleeping, the child of promise, the laughter in his old age. But today was not a day for laughter. Today was a test like no other, a test that pierced the heart of a father and the soul of a believer. A shocking command: take your son, your only son, whom you love, Isaac, and go to the region of Moriah. Sacrifice him there as a burnt offering on a mountain I will show you. Genesis 22:2. It was not the kind of command one can misunderstand. There were no metaphors or hidden meanings. God had spoken clearly and directly. Isaac, Abraham's miracle child, the one he had waited for his whole life, the very fulfillment of God's covenant, was now to be given back, not in celebration, but in sacrifice. There is no record of Abraham protesting, no argument like the one he made for Sodom, only silence and action. The journey to Moriah. Abraham saddled his donkey, took 2 servants and Isaac, and began the 3-day journey to the region of Moriah. Each step was a step deeper into mystery, into obedience, into trust that defied comprehension. The silence of the road must have been deafening. Perhaps Isaac skipped ahead, unaware, asking innocent questions. Perhaps Abraham rehearsed the promise over and over in his mind. Through Isaac, your offspring will be reckoned. And yet God had not asked for that very son. Was this the end of the promise, or was it a beginning yet unseen? The Lord will provide. On the 3rd day, Abraham saw the mountain in the distance. He told his servants, stay here with the donkey while I and the boy go over there. We will worship, and then we will come back to you. Genesis 22:5, we will come back. Faith spoke even when logic faltered. Somehow, Abraham believed God would make a way, even if it meant raising Isaac from the dead. He placed the wood of the burnt offering on Isaac's back and took fire and knife in his own hands. Together, they climbed. Father, Isaac said, the fire and wood are here, but where is the lamb for the burnt offering? Abraham answered, his voice steady, God himself will provide the lamb. The altar and the knife, they reached the summit. Abraham built an altar, arranged the wood, and then bound Isaac. The text offers no words from the boy, no struggle. Isaac's trust in his father was total. Abraham laid his son on the altar, raised the knife, and at that very moment, Abraham, Abraham, the angel of the Lord called from heaven. Abraham froze. Do not lay a hand on the boy. Do not do anything to him. Now I know that you fear God because you have not withheld from me your son, your only son. Relief, holy fear, all must have rushed into Abraham's chest at once. He turned, and there in the thicket was a ram, caught by its horns. Abraham took the ram and sacrificed it instead of Isaac. Yahweh Yireh, the Lord will provide. Abraham named the mountain Yahweh Yireh, the Lord will provide, a name that would echo through generations. The angel called again, confirming the promise. Because you have done this and have not withheld your son, your only son, I will surely bless you. Through your offspring, all nations on earth will be blessed, because you have obeyed me. The covenant was not only reaffirmed, it was deepened. God had tested Abraham's heart, and in return, Abraham received a vision of God's own, a God who does not delight in child sacrifice, but who provides, who intervenes, and who ultimately fulfills his promises through radical grace. Themes that resonate through time. 1. Trust beyond understanding. Abraham's obedience wasn't blind, it was faith-filled. He believed in the character of God, even when the command seemed to contradict the promise. 2. Sacrifice and surrender. Abraham was willing to give up the most precious thing in his life. True faith often means putting God above even the gifts he gives. 3. God's provision at the critical moment. God provided a ram in place of Isaac. This moment foreshadows countless future acts of divine substitution culminating in Christian theology with the sacrifice of Christ. Echoes across scripture and tradition. In Christianity, this story is seen as a powerful foreshadowing of the crucifixion of Jesus, God's own Son offered on another hill for the salvation of the world. In Judaism, the binding of Isaac, the Akedah, is a central theme of trust and covenant, especially remembered during Rosh Hashanah. In Islam, the story is commemorated during Eid al-Adha, although Islamic tradition often names Ishmael, not Isaac, as the son in the narrative, focusing on submission, Islam, to God's will. Conclusion. The mountain still speaks. The story of Abraham and Isaac on Mount Moriah is not just a tale from ancient pages. It is a mirror for every heart that has ever wrestled with obedience, every soul that has stood trembling at the edge of surrender, and every voice that has whispered, "Where is the Lamb?" And the answer, again and again, is the same: the Lord will provide. Jacob and Esau, birthright, blessing, and the hand of God, when family tensions meet divine purpose. The tent was quiet, except for the sound of a woman's whispered prayer. Rebekah had longed for children, but her womb had been silent for years. Then, at last, the God of her husband Isaac heard her cry. She was pregnant, but it was no ordinary pregnancy. The life within her felt like a battle. Concerned, she sought the Lord, and his answer was as mysterious as it was prophetic. 2 nations are in your womb, and 2 peoples from within you will be separated. 1 people will be stronger than the other, and the older will serve the younger. Genesis 25-23, 2 brothers, 2 paths. When the time came, Rebekah gave birth to twins. The first emerged red and hairy, and they named him Esau. The second came out grasping his brother's heel, and he was named Jacob, a name meaning heel grabber or supplanter. The boys could not have been more different. Esau grew into a rugged hunter, the kind of man who thrived outdoors. Jacob preferred the tents, living a quieter life close to home. Isaac favored Esau for his skill with game. Rebekah loved Jacob, perhaps holding on to God's prophecy that the older would serve the younger, the birthright bargain. One day, Esau returned from hunting exhausted and starving. Jacob was cooking a pot of red stew. "Quick, let me have some of that red stew." "I'm famished," Esau demanded. Jacob saw an opportunity. "First, sell me your birthright." The birthright was more than inheritance. It was the honor of leading the family, the spiritual headship, and the lion's share of wealth and blessing. Esau, in a moment of short-sighted hunger, agreed. "I am about to die. What good is the birthright to me?" Jacob gave him bread and lentil stew, and Esau ate and went away. The transaction was sealed, but the tension between the brothers had only begun. The blessing deception. Years later, Isaac, now old and nearly blind, decided to bless Esau as his firstborn. This blessing was more than kind words. It was the formal declaration of God's favor, authority, and promise. He called Esau and asked him to hunt game and prepare a meal, after which he would bestow the blessing. But Rebekah overheard. She quickly devised a plan for Jacob to receive the blessing instead. Jacob hesitated. What if father touches me? But Rebekah insisted. She dressed Jacob in Esau's clothes and covered his smooth arms with goat skins to mimic Esau's hair. Jacob approached his father. I am Esau, your firstborn. Isaac was suspicious. The voice is the voice of Jacob, but the hands are the hands of Esau. Still uncertain, Isaac ate the meal Jacob brought and at last pronounced the blessing. May God give you heaven's dew and earth's richness. Be Lord over your brothers, and may the sons of your mother bow to you. Esau's anger. Moments later, Esau returned from hunting and learned what had happened. His cry was loud and bitter. Bless me too, my father. But Isaac could not take back what was given. The blessing stood. All he could offer Esau was a lesser promise, one of struggle, but also the hope of breaking free from his brother's yoke. Esau's grief turned into rage. He vowed to kill Jacob once their father died, flight and a ladder to heaven. Rebekah warned Jacob, sending him to her brother Laban in Haran to escape Esau's wrath. On the way, Jacob stopped for the night, using a stone for a pillow. As he slept, he dreamed. A ladder stretched from earth to heaven, and angels ascended and descended upon it. At the top stood the Lord, who repeated the promises made to Abraham and Isaac. I am with you and will watch over you wherever you go. I will not leave you until I have done what I have promised you. Jacob awoke, awed. Surely the Lord is in this place, and I was not aware of it. He named the place Bethel, meaning house of God, and made a vow to serve the Lord if he would protect him. Themes woven through the story. 1. God's sovereignty. Even in the mess of deceit and favoritism, God's purposes move forward. His prophecy that the older would serve the younger was fulfilled, not because of human scheming, but in spite of it. 2. Family dynamics. The favoritism of Isaac and Rebekah set the stage for division. The story is a cautionary tale about partiality, communication, and the way personal preferences can fracture families. 3. Reconciliation foreshadowed. Though this portion ends with separation, Jacob and Esau's story does not end in hatred forever. Years later, God would bring them face to face again, not for revenge, but for reconciliation. Genesis 33. Conclusion: a God who works through imperfection. The story of Jacob and Esau is messy, full of deception, favoritism, impulsive decisions, and strained relationships. Yet in all of it, God's sovereign hand is evident. Jacob left home carrying both blessing and guilt, but also a new awareness of God's presence. And Esau, though wronged, would one day find grace to forgive. In the end, this is not just a tale of sibling rivalry. It is a reminder that God's purposes are not thwarted by human flaws, and that his story often bends toward reconciliation, even when the path there is long. Joseph's story, From Pit to Palace. A journey of pain, providence, and peace. The story of Joseph, son of Jacob, begins not in power, but in the tension of a divided household. Joseph was the firstborn son of Jacob's beloved wife Rachel, and his father's clear favorite. Jacob gave him a richly ornamented robe, a coat that whispered favoritism in every thread. For Joseph's brothers, the robe was not just fabric. It was a banner of jealousy, dreams that stirred hatred. Joseph was a dreamer literally. He told his brothers of 2 dreams. In one, their sheaves of grain bowed to his. In another, the sun, moon, and 11 stars bowed down before him. The meaning was obvious. Joseph was claiming that one day they would all submit to him. They hated him all the more because of his dream and what he had said. Genesis 37-8, betrayal in the fields. One day, Jacob sent Joseph to check on his brothers in the fields. Seeing him approach, the brothers plotted murder. Only Reuben, the eldest, persuaded them not to shed blood, suggesting instead they throw Joseph into a pit. When a caravan of Ishmaelite traders passed by, Judah proposed selling Joseph into slavery. The brothers agreed, and Joseph was taken to Egypt, while they dipped his robe in goat's blood and told Jacob a wild animal had killed him. Jacob's grief was deep and unrelenting, from slave to prisoner. In Egypt, Joseph was sold to Potiphar, an officer of Pharaoh. Joseph worked faithfully and rose to manage Potiphar's household, until Potiphar's wife falsely accused him of assault. Without a trial, Joseph was thrown into prison. Even there, Joseph found favor with the warden and was placed in charge of the prisoners. His gift for interpreting dreams brought him to the attention of two royal officials, the chief, cupbearer, and the baker, both imprisoned by Pharaoh. Joseph correctly interpreted their dreams. The cupbearer would be restored, the baker executed. Joseph asked the cupbearer to remember him before Pharaoh. But once free, the cupbearer forgot. From prison to palace. 2 years later, Pharaoh himself had troubling dreams, 7 fat cows devoured by 7 thin cows, and 7 healthy heads of grain swallowed by 7 withered ones. None of Egypt's magicians could explain them. The cupbearer finally remembered Joseph. Brought before Pharaoh, Joseph said, "I cannot do it. But God will give Pharaoh the answer he desires." Joseph explained that the dreams foretold 7 years of abundance followed by 7 years of famine. He advised Pharaoh to store surplus grain during the good years. Impressed, Pharaoh made Joseph second in command over all Egypt. The slave, the prisoner, was now a ruler. A family's famine, a brother's test. When famine struck, it reached Canaan. Jacob sent 10 of his sons to Egypt for grain. They bowed before the Egyptian ruler, unaware he was Joseph. Joseph recognized them immediately but did not reveal himself. Instead, he tested them, accusing them of being spies, demanding they bring their youngest brother Benjamin. Through a series of encounters detaining Simeon, planting a silver cup in Benjamin's sack, Joseph watched to see if his brothers had changed. Judah's plea to take Benjamin's place rather than break their father's heart revealed a transformation. The reveal and reconciliation. Joseph could no longer hold back. "I am Joseph. Is my father still living?" His brothers were speechless, terrified. But Joseph spoke peace. "Do not be distressed or angry with yourselves for selling me here, because it was to save lives that God sent me ahead of you. You intended to harm me, but God intended it for good to accomplish what is now being done, the saving of many lives." Genesis 45-5, 50-20. He embraced them, wept with them, and provided for their families. Themes woven through the story. 1. Forgiveness. Joseph's mercy toward his brothers is radical. He chooses reconciliation over revenge, breaking the cycle of family betrayal. 2. God's providence. The thread of God's purpose runs through every twist: the pit, the prison, the palace. What others meant for harm, God used for salvation. 3. Perseverance. Joseph's journey is marked by endurance through injustice, betrayal, and delay. His faithfulness in each season prepared him for leadership. Conclusion: the God who brings good from evil. Joseph's story is more than a rags to riches tale. It is a reminder that God's purposes often unfold in ways we cannot see at the moment. The pit, the prison, the betrayal, all became stepping stones toward a plan far greater than Joseph could have imagined. In the end, the boy with dreams saw them fulfilled, not in triumph over his brothers, but in serving and saving them.